Good morning and welcome. I'd like to read to you and have you follow along out of Ruth chapter 3. Ruth chapter 3, and we're going to start in verse 14. Ruth chapter 3 and verse 14. And this is actually going to be, that was the last verse we covered 2 weeks ago. Last week we had children's our Student Sunday, and so I want us to just overlap this one verse, and we'll talk about that because that was kind of our cliffhanger for the last couple of weeks. And so I'll start in verse 14, and I'm going to go to chapter 4 and verse 4. So looking at this, Ruth chapter 3, verse 14, "So she lay at his feet until the morning, and rose before one could recognize another. And he said, 'Let it not be known that a woman came to the threshing floor.' Again he said, 'Give me the cloak that is on you, and hold it.' So she held it, and he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her. Then she went into the city. When she came to her mother-in-law, she said, 'How did it go, my daughter?' And she told her all that the man had done for her. She said, 'These 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, do not go to your mother-in-law empty-handed.' Then she said, 'Wait, my daughter, until you know how the matter turns out. The man will not rest until he has settled it today.'" Chapter 4, verse 1. "Now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there, and behold, the close relative whom Boaz spoke was passing by. So he said, 'Turn aside, friend, sit down here.' And he turned aside and sat down. He took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, 'Sit down here.' So they sat down. Then he said to the closest relative, 'Naomi, whom has come back from the land of Moab, has to sell the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech. So I thought to inform you, saying, buy it before those who are sitting here and before the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if not, tell me that I may know, for there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am after you.' And he said, 'I will redeem it.'" Well, I want to just kind of give us a retracing of where we were. This is not the message yet. This is just by introduction. However, back in verse 12 of chapter 3, Boaz says to Ruth, "Now it is true I am a close relative. However, there is a closer than I. Remain this night, and when morning comes, if he will redeem you, good. Let him redeem you. But if he does not wish to redeem you, then I will redeem you. As the Lord lives, lie down until morning." Now, a couple of things here. This, however, it must have hung in the air that entire night. When I look at it, he said, "It is true, I am a close relative." Words you don't normally associate with marriage, like, "Oh, I'm a close relative," but there's an eligible guy that's even more related to you. Not exactly how we would frame marriage today, like, "Oh, yes, I know that we are cousins, but there's a closer cousin." No, this is that marriage redemption that was part of the law, so that a tribe in Israel would not die out, so that a family name would perpetuate. But I can imagine as all this is setting up, and as she has this thought in her mind, Boaz is such a wonderful guy. He's a kinsman redeemer. Perhaps he'll redeem me. And she has this whole plan her mother-in-law set up. Again, not the plan I would have given my daughter Becky. And I'm sure none of us would give our children this plan. Go uncover this person's feet, lie down at their feet, and do whatever they tell you to do. Not exactly what we would do. But Boaz was a man of honor. This was, in fact, a way of requesting redemption. This was her proposal. And she took the courage, made her request for marriage, and there was somebody that was even more qualified, if you will, for this marriage. And then he simply tells her, lie down until morning. Now, first of all, when you get up at midnight, there's always this iffy thing, am I going to fall back to sleep? Now, if you're still pretty young, hallelujah, it means you're going to fall back to sleep. Get a little older, it's really weird. Sleep can be totally ambiguous. It can be a hard thing to chase. I want to bring us to this point. Sleep. First point in the message. Sleep or stealth. Sleep or stealth. Verse 14. So she lay at his feet until morning and rose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. This is interesting because the scripture does not actually say that she slept. Okay? It just says, so she lay at his feet until morning and rose before one could recognize another. It wasn't like she had an alarm clock that she'd say, okay, I've got this haptic sensor on my smartwatch that'll just buzz my wrist, won't wake people up. If you've ever lived a dormitory life, you'd be very shocked at what people have for alarm clocks. I mean, I've heard everything from the Reveille bugle kind of alarm clocks to these alarm clocks that go, they're just terrible. I do not want to wake up to unless it's my fire alarm, and then I do want to wake up. That would be the only way. I don't think that they really slept. I think that they just laid there as quiet as possible. But what I do know is that they were stealthy. They were very stealthy. Because there's a lot that takes place in this dark hour. In my mind, it's 4:30 in the morning. I don't know why, but it's just, in my mind, it's 4:30 in the morning. The sun has not risen yet. It's the spring of the day. And indeed, before anyone could even recognize another person, they both get up. And he says this. Now, you just have to wonder how well people must have been sleeping that he's able to say, don't let it be known that a woman came on the threshing floor today. I mean, that he could say that and then other people aren't saying, what? Hey, what? What's going on? Hey, who's over there? Nothing like that. They were very, very stealthy. I'm going to just tell you something, but I'm not wearing shoes. My toes do nothing but sound like popcorn every step I take. There's like no way I could walk through that threshing floor that people would be saying, is somebody having snap, crackle, and pop for breakfast or something here? Like, there are so many noises that my knee will crack, getting up, getting up in the morning, then the hacking and the coughing and all those other things that take place. They were stealthy. I mean, they get up and nobody was the wiser. Aren't you glad that they're virtuous people and they weren't kind of edgy, kind of fleshy kind of people, because they might have been able to get away with something bad. We all recognize the refreshment of a good night's sleep. Nothing like it. However, there's the power of a sleepless night. Now, the power to not be able to sleep is one of them, but there are times I believe that the Lord just doesn't let us sleep. Maybe there's something we need to pray about, think about, meditate on, but there are times, and I'm sure that every one of us has had that, where we've had a very poor night's sleep or very often awake night's sleep, and maybe the Lord is trying to speak to us. Just like he spoke to Samuel, as Samuel is laying down as a young person, and God is calling him, and he keeps jumping up and running to Eli saying, you called me, and finally Eli says, I think the Lord is talking to you. Sometimes that happens for us. We all recognize the refreshment of a good night's sleep. We sometimes have the power of a sleepless night. The subconscious sometimes works things out for us. We still use that axiom, let me sleep on that. And I hope big decisions, you take a chance to maybe sleep on it and think about it. But there are times in which the subconscious works things out, but often it is a conscious effort When there's a problem, a struggle, a difficulty, those are the times where that sleepless night, God is letting us work through some things. And hopefully by morning we come to just trust that the Lord will take care of us. I want us to switch measures. So we've looked at sleep and stealth. Now I want to talk about 6 measures and sheesh. Now, it's actually shesh, but my father would always say sheesh. Like, if something just didn't happen the way he was expecting it, or there was something that happened that was just not quite right, he'd say sheesh. Now, if things went really bad, he'd say shish kebab. And we knew that that was the time not to like insert ourselves into the process. Like, just sort of step back. But he would often say sheesh, right? You know, he'd come into the house and say, Bunny, that was my mom's nickname for him. Bunny, what's for supper? And if she'd say, like, it's not ready yet, he'd say, like, sheesh. Like, that would be his thing. Well, sheesh here is actually the Hebrew word, and we're going to get into this. But you say 6 measures. Is this really worth the point? It's absolutely just a beautiful point to make here. Look at this. So they've gotten up. They're being quiet. He's whispering to her. I can imagine if she's whispering to him, he's not hearing a word. Okay? How many guys are partially deaf or are hard of hearing by the time they're 30? I think there's a lot of them. Anyways, I never hear back from them, but I'm joking. So, look at verse 15. Again, he said, give me the cloak that is on you, and hold it out. Everything here, if you have a carnal mind, is going to be wrong. Lay at my feet all night long. Oh, I can redeem you. Maybe. Why don't you lay down with me for the rest of the night? Let's get up in the morning. Oh, could you give me the cloak you're wearing? Yeah. In the world's terms, we'd say this is terrible, but these people have virtue. And it says here again, he said, give me the cloak that is on you and hold it. So she held it, and he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her. Then she went into the city. This is such a picture of grace. Maybe not every point in this message this morning is going to have something for you. But when we go through the truth of Ruth, I hope that there's going to be at least one of these points that is going to land with you and help you in your journey. First of all, I want to talk about the measure of 6. It's from the Hebrew word shesh, which is, if you look at this, that's the word in Hebrew. It's shin shin. And we supplement vowels in between. They did not use vowel characters. It's a primitive number. It's the number 6. You said, we already got that, Joe. But it's as the overplus of the Hebrew. Now, all the Hebrew words in the Bible and all the Greek words are in a lexicon, and they are numbered, systematically numbered. If you had your Strong's Concordance, he spent all that time numbering all of the words so that you could look up a word in the lexicon. 6 is as an overplus of H7797. It is the word that means beyond 5 or the fingers on your hand. Now, we tend to count things by 5s, right? 5, 10, 15, 20. We have a base system, and that works really well. It works well because when you're young, how many are you? How old are you? This many, right? 5 and 10, 15 and 20. You count your fingers and your toes and come up with that. But this word is actually special because it means more than 5. It means one more than 5. And we've got arithmetic at this level. If we can't get 5 plus 1 is 6, I'm going to tell you 5 plus 1 is 6. But it's more like the baker's dozen. Now, we don't get that very much anymore, but it used to be like when there were bakeries and you'd go there, they would say, baker's dozen of donuts. And what that meant is you'd get 13. Well, this was the baker's 5. This was like, here's 5, but you know what? 1 more because I like you. Okay? I know that 5-cylinder cars are supposed to have the best balance of fire and order that's made. I've seen some Audi 5-cylinders. I'd take a 6 or a 4 any day. 5 seems to be not quite the number I'm looking for. Here, this number is picturing generosity. Now, the interesting thing is that nobody knows what the measure was, because it didn't say if it was an omer. Remember when she had the omer and it was 22 liters? What commentators say is between 30 and 80 pounds of grain is what he put on her. That's a harvest. I mean, that would be one where when you slung that over your shoulder, it would be almost as heavy as your kid's backpack that's full of books and computers and Chromebooks and all that other stuff. It would be like taking a sack of bricks home. I love it because he intends to marry this woman. But he's going to slap dab, send her home with 6 measures of barley. When we look at this, it's like he could have given her 5, he could have given her none. He'd already given her 22 liters of barley, and now he lays on what is potentially much more grain on her. And it's a beautiful picture of grace, because it wasn't just enough, it was more than enough plus 1. Just such a beautiful thing. The cloak. Do you remember what her mother-in-law told her? Wash, anoint yourself, put on your best cloak. Now, I'm a very practical person. I'm very pragmatic. I'm practical. You say, oh, I always see you wear Carhartts to church. You know why I do that? I get my first wearing of years out of my Carhartts at church, and then they become my work Carhartts, where they have their second life. That's why I do it. It's simple, because I don't wear bandolon pants to work, we'll say, or the slick slacks, or the pleated kind of slacks to work. I wear work clothes. You say, why do you bring this up? Because my work clothes tend to have holes. I'm not sure about you, nothing like immodest, but I tend to wear out the knees, or something happened some years ago. They started making blue jeans where the pockets put a hole in the back side of your pants, and I have patches on my pants, or I have pants that have maybe some stains on them. When she took her best cloak, you know what that meant? No holes, no stains, and clean. I'm a little stickler about my food. I don't like my food wrapped up in my dirty work clothes. You know, my socks would make a great storage for grain, but I'm not going to peel them off my feet to put my grain in there. And so we see this beautiful picture that somebody suggests you do this. She does it. She has this cloak now. And the cloak, I want to just give this to you. The mitkaf denotes the loose outer cloth worn or carried by women in ancient Israel. Depending on the context, it serves as a shawl, a cloak, a wrap, or a makeshift pouch. Now, I'm taking this right out of a lexicon definition of this. Made of linen or wool, it could be both practical, providing warmth and modesty, or ornamental, displaying family's craftsmanship and wealth. Now, if you're from Scotland, it would also have a weave, a tartan, that would identify what clan you're part of. But nonetheless, when he says take off your cloak, it is not what she's wearing underneath. She still has clothes. This is just a wrap or a shawl that she'd have, but they would be large. Okay, it's not like a scarf. It is much larger. Let's look at what she said and settled. Let's look at she said and settled. Did you see that? Let's look at verses 16 through 18. When she came to her mother-in-law, she said, "How did it go, my daughter?" And she told her all that the man had done for her. She said, "These 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, 'Do not go to your mother-in-law Then she said, wait, my daughter, until you know how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest until he has settled it today. She said, and settled. What is interesting is, maybe your translation is a little different in verse 16, but mine says, when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, how did it go, my daughter? But in the original language, it is literally, who are you? I mean, at this point, Ruth is going to say, like, doesn't anybody know me? Am I invisible? You know, like, in the middle of the night, Boaz is saying, who are you? And I come in the morning, and my mother-in-law, who's expecting me to return any moment, says, who are you? You ever feel invisible in this world? You ever feel like people just don't even see you, like that you barely exist? If you don't, take a ride around any one of our rotary roundabouts around here. At some point, people will drive into that not recognizing that you're even there. Now, I love roundabouts. Belinda hates them. I think they're a great way to keep traffic moving, but there are people that just basically use this as their kamikaze mission, right? That it's like, I'm moving, so I must have the right of way. And like, then you get people that are just stuck on the endless circular carousel, and it's anyways. Who are you? Are you invisible? Not at all. I want you to see what she said here. Did you see that? First of all, she said, who are you? But second of all, she said this in verse 18. Then she said, wait, my daughter, until you know how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest until he has settled it today. The most important thing she said was not, who are you? And in the verse 17, when it says, she said, this is actually Ruth talking. But with Naomi, the most important thing she said is that it will be settled. One way or another, it will be settled. Now, we're all leaning the way we are hoping it will settle. But one way or another, it will be settled. Ruth lets her know in verse 17 something so important. It's very easy to read over. She said, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, do not go to your mother-in-law empty-handed. I want to take you back to Ruth chapter 1, verse 21. When Naomi wants to be renamed, remember, Naomi means pleasantness. Mara means bitter. This is what happens. I'm going to start in verse 19. So they both went until they came to Bethlehem. And when they had come to Bethlehem, all the city was stirred because of them. And the women said, is this Naomi? She said, do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. And now, this is the key point. I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has witnessed against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me? She feels afflicted and deserted by God. She states she is coming back empty. And this beautiful turnaround. Ruth 121 records Naomi's grief. I went away full, but the Lord brought me back empty. Her lament frames the book's exploration of loyal love. The Lord answers her through Boaz in 3:17. Do not go to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Underwriting redemption through the covenant of kindness. Sometimes just a little token of kindness, a kind word, a note, a small something. And it makes all the difference in the world. God has used Boaz here and the words that he has said. And if you remember, it wasn't that Naomi was talking to the people of Bethlehem. It was simply talking to the women when she said, I am empty. And in the end, they are full. It is such a beautiful picture of redemption through the covenant of kindness. At this point, I feel it's worth mentioning that Ruth is not lobbying or advocating for a future. Her mother-in-law is well-intentioned. She is not a pushover, but she is very directive, and she is very caring for Ruth. She is looking at Ruth's future, and she has made some very strong suggestions to her, of which Ruth has followed through without flinching. Ruth has not advocated for herself. Boaz has told her what to do. Lay down till morning. Don't let anybody know you're here. Take this to your mother-in-law. Ruth has quietly and patiently continued. She has a lot of faith. She does. And it's not to say Ruth is a pushover. She is not a pushover. She made a decision to come to Bethlehem. She made a decision to be part of this family. She made the decision to glean. She made the decision what field to glean. She is not a pushover. And by the way, faithfulness and submission to the Lord is not weakness. It is power. It is God's authority on your life. But again, she has not advocated for herself in any way. She is under the control of God's goodness and that compassionate, kind redemption. Now, if you remember, the last thing that is said in chapter 3, verse 18 is this: "For the man will not rest until he has settled it today." And the first thing we see is he's sitting down. Now, it doesn't mean you're not working sitting down. But it sure seems different in those days. I mean, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, it tells us, and when he had sat down, he delivered the sermon. Now, if I sat down, you would only hear a voice. You wouldn't even see me behind this pulpit. And this is by far not the biggest pulpit I've ever preached behind. I mean, I followed a pastor, no joke, that weighed over 300 pounds at a church and had been their interim pastor. And that was the biggest pulpit in the world. It came up to about here, and it was about this wide. It was just unbelievable. It was massive. Now, I'm not about to sit down, but I have had to preach sitting down at times after having surgery. Not the comfortable way to preach, but it is a little bit more comfortable than standing when you're on crutches. But I want you to see here, chapter 4, verse 1. Now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the close relative of whom Boaz spoke was passing by. So he said, "Turn aside, friend, sit down here." And he turned aside and sat down. Now, if you'd been with us this morning in Sunday school, we actually had a lesson on gates in the Bible. And one of the things is that business, official business, is conducted in the gates in the Old Testament Israel, and not just Israel, but in the Old Testament culture, business was done in the gate. And this is exactly what we see here. We don't often think of gates as anything more than regulating who comes in and who goes out, if anyone can come in or go out. But here we'll find that they actually have seats and they have courts of action that take place in these gates. And we see Boaz right here. And don't you love it? His closer relative doesn't even realize this is a total ambush for love. This is for love, and it is a total ambush. His closer relative just happens to be passing by. I love how the King James puts it, "Ho, such a one," right? Hey, brother, have a seat. I'm going to talk to you, right? Not literally a brother, but just calling out brothers and mankind. "Turn aside, friend, and sit down here." Verse 2 kind of clears it up. He took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. He is assembling this thing. He is going to do some wonderful things because God is so good. Boaz is sitting in the gate as elders of the city would do. He is there not as a judge this time, but as a person who is going to read the warrant, if you will. So Boaz sat down, and he describes to his closer relative, sit down. And then the story takes a turn. This chowderhead who just sat down next to him is going to accept Naomi, and he does not know, but he's just thinking Naomi and her property. Let's look at this. I'll read 2 through 4. He took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, sit down here. So they sat down. Then he said to the closest relative, Naomi, who has come back from the land of Moab, has to sell the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech. So I thought to inform you, saying, buy it before those who are sitting here and before the elders of my people. This is the court. Right now, Elimelech's property would then become this closest relative's property in the name of Elimelech. Maybe you do that in your neighborhood. Like, we've lived in our neighborhood for 31 years, and we talk about Mr. LaFlamme's house. Mr. LaFlamme died in 2002. It's still called Mr. LaFlamme's house. Ed's house. Ed passed away 6 years ago. And we could talk about, they talk about the minister's house. Not me. A White House across the street that belonged to somebody else. We talk about, oh, across the street is the nursing home. Hasn't been a nursing home in a long time. Here are these landmarks. And he's saying, yeah, I'll acquire it. Maybe you know certain people that just will buy up property. If it's adjoining property, they want to build a buffer zone that's impenetrable around their property. And this guy is just thinking, yes, I've got the money. This is like playing Monopoly, and you start putting houses and hotels on the property. And he's like, yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah, I'll get Elimelech's property. You bet. That's exactly what I want. This was not what we were expecting. We were expecting that Boaz was going to be the Redeemer. And here in verse 4, so I thought to inform you, saying, buy it before those who are sitting here, and before the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know, for there is no one but you to redeem it, and after you, and I am after you. And he said, I will redeem it. In other words, he said, sure. Because he hadn't thought about it yet. Sure. And I got to tell you, the first time as a young adult reading this, I can't tell you how disappointed I was when I came to that point. It was like, reread this. Wait, what? No, this is not how the story turns out. Right? This guy, we don't even know his name. This guy, he only wants land. This is not what this is about. In fact, if this goes through, this would purely be transactional redemption. It would be about property, not about a person. He is interested in the land, not this lady. He's really not that interested in Naomi. Or he would have said, well, I guess I'm going to go through with this. He is about property, not about a person. I'm glad that the Lord is not about property, but about people. I'm glad that if for some reason there was an earthquake or a disaster and this church building fell flat, that we would have services somewhere. Because the church is not a building, it is the people. And redemption shouldn't be about property, it should be about a person. So this is where I loop back, and as I said, maybe not every point lands with you, but I want to review this truth by the 5 points we've covered. The first thing I want to say is that reputation is important, but it's less than character. Character is more important. The fact that they did not get caught, they didn't do anything. In other words, he's trying to save her reputation, but it's really about character. It's about who you are when no one can see you, which for Ruth is about all the time, apparently. Grace helps every already had 22 liters of grace from her expansive gleaning. And now she comes back with 6 measures, anywhere from 30 pounds of grain to 80 pounds. When Belinda and I were first married, we lived in a city that had taken on Vietnamese boat people. I don't know if you remember the boat lift from Vietnam, but we had a lot of Vietnamese people come to America. I worked with Vietnamese boat people in Anaheim, California, moved back to Rhode Island, and there's a wonderful guy, Ian. And I worked with him at Carroll Cable Corporation, and his wife started a little Vietnamese store. And he said, "You go and buy rice for my wife, please." And so we went there, and he taught me how to order rice from his wife in Vietnamese. And it took a lot of practice. I still remember it today, and we've been married for 46 years, and this is 46 years ago. It was Toi Mu Gao, or I should say, Chao Bacao, Toi Mu Gao. The most honorable way I could address his wife, and then I would like to buy rice. She said, yeah, that's good. Came back and had a 20-kilo bag of rice. Just so you know, that's 44 pounds of rice. I eat a lot more rice today than I ever have in my life. 44 pounds of rice for us was too much. No. She came back with 10 kilos. That's 22 pounds of rice. No. We finally got it down to half a kilo of rice, which is a pound and some odd ounces of rice. Can you imagine coming home with 22 liters of barley after your first day of gleaning, in which people are lucky to get a sandwich bag's worth, and then to be sent home with anywhere from, even if we went to the low ball, 20 pounds of grain? Grace helps every situation. It takes grace to be a winner, and it takes grace to be a loser, and it takes a grace to be anywhere in between. That third thing we talked about, many things are just flat out of our hands. There are lots of decisions, there's lots of things we deal with in life that are just beyond our control. It is out of our hands. It is not the way we want things to work out. It happens that way. God has a plan. And when that happens, point 3 happens, I want you to refresh and think back to point 2, that grace helps every situation. The fourth thing, that when we look at Boaz and redemption, it is important to have people who love you. It does not have to be marriage love. It does not have to be boyfriend and girlfriend love. It doesn't even have to be family love. Sometimes our family loves us, and sometimes they don't even want to deal with us. But we all need someone to love us. Be that person that represents the love of Christ. And finally, as our situation looks terrible, as this Redeemer has said, "Sure, I'll take her," keep hope alive. Even when it appears to be hopeless, keep hope alive. I pray there's something for you here today in these truths from Ruth. Listen, if you are presently struggling, if you feel without hope, without a tiller in the direction of your life and where it's heading, keep hope alive. Know that the loving Redeemer Jesus always is offering grace, help. Be that person who encourages another person. Have deep character. If you're without Christ, please talk to me. My wheels don't squeal if there's somebody that has a need for Jesus or has a need for a conversation from the Bible. Please don't feel that you'd ever be put off. You would not. Let's pray.